We are halfway through the 2025 college football season, and the West Virginia Mountaineers are finally getting a much-needed bye week. And I, Couz, am here to finally give you my BYU reaction from West Virginia's 38-24 loss. I'm going to give you my positive takeaways and my negative takeaways from that game by the Mountaineers. So stick around and we'll have that conversation right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college sports news and analysis surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. I know it's been a couple days since you've seen me. I haven't done a recap show since the game was over, but I've had personal responsibilities to attend to this weekend that have prevented me from doing so. My family will always come first, as you guys, I'm sure, expect. So that's what I've been doing. And as a lot of you know, I've also been dealing with a hacked Twitter account that I've been trying to recover. But anyway, back to the point at hand, back to the show. I'm going to dive in and give you my thoughts on West Virginia's 38-24 loss to BYU. I think there are some takeaways from this game, both positive and negative, that I want to touch on. Obviously, the negatives are more glaring, right, because they lost the game, and they've really been struggling. They've all dropped 3 straight Big 12 games, 2 of them in blowout fashion. Even though it was a 2-touchdown game, this game, in my opinion, was not as close as the score indicates. BYU had control of that game from really during its entirety. But there were some positives to take away from it, and I'm choosing not to pile on this football team. Yes, I'm going to critique them. Yes, I'm going to talk about where they were lacking, but I'm not going to pile on them, okay? I'm going to try to stay as positive as I can because this team's already going through enough adversity. They're dealing with injuries. They're dealing with, guys leaving the team in the middle of the season, guys who were leaders leaving the team in the middle of the season. They're obviously beat up both physically and mentally. So there's no reason for me to get on here and pile on, but we are just going to be fair and talk about the positives and the negatives. Now, the negatives, which is where we're going to start, I actually wrote down more positives than negatives, but these negatives were really, really glaring negatives. And they were negatives in areas that affect everything else, really. But the 2 biggest negatives were the overall pass defense, which I'll dive a little bit more into some numbers, not stats per se, but PFF grades and some key moments, things like that. And then obviously the inability to run the football with your running backs, which is why Khalil Wilkins had to run the ball 23 times. Okay, which is not what you want, But they had to generate offense somehow. And let's go ahead and start off with the pass defense. Now, the defense for the first 3.5 games of the season were the strength of this football team. They had played well. Even in the Ohio loss, the defense played well. They played well for the most part in the Pitt game. They had played well in the FCS game against Robert Morris. And even really in the first half against Kansas, I thought they played well. But ever since that halftime of Kansas, the second half of that Kansas game, the defense has struggled, especially against Utah and especially against BYU. But in this game, it was more so the pass defense that struggled. The talk all week was how BYU, you had L.J. Martin, really good running back to watch out for, how Bear Bachmeier was a quarterback who could run with the football, and how if you could put pressure on him, you could potentially, cause some chaos, cause BYU's offense some issues, and maybe win the football game. Well, despite West Virginia forcing 3 turnovers, they still lost the game because Bear Bachmeier was able to do whatever the heck he wanted to in the pass game. He opened the game with a deep bomb down the field against West Virginia, arguably West Virginia's best corner in Michael Coates. Chase Roberts beat Michael Coates one-on-one for that ball. Now, some said there should have been a safety behind Michael Coates. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the scheme was. So maybe it was not Michael Coates' fault. But at the end of the day, Chase Roberts beat Michael Coates twice in that game for deep passes. The one in the beginning of the game, and there was another one later in the game. I think it was the one later in the game, actually, where maybe there was supposed to have been a safety there. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, and the PFF grades show that Michael Coates had a bad day. But not piling on Michael Coates, by the way. Those are just 2 examples. When arguably your best cover corner is getting beat badly, you probably know it's not going to be a good night for your football team, because he was not the only one struggling. Matter of fact, when you look at the PFF grades for this football team, their overall pass coverage grade, just a 60. Now, that doesn't sound terrible. It's basically average, okay? It's basically average. It's their second lowest score of the year. They only had a 30 against Utah, so they did improve from the previous week, but here's the problem. The players who had the lower grades was pretty much your secondary, the guys you needed to depend on to stop people like Chase Roberts and those other really good BYU receivers. Kokora Tarnu was your highest grading defensive back in pass coverage, and he only played 7 pass coverage snaps. He graded out 64.5. Highest graded starting defensive back was Derek Carter. I didn't even realize he started that game, to be honest, who played 20 pass coverage snaps and only graded out at 58.8. Darian Lewis graded out at 56.7, the other safety. Michael Coach Jr. had the lowest coverage grade of 32.2. He was targeted twice had 2 catches against him for 132 yards, 66 yards per reception. Jason Chambers, your other really good cornerback who's been playing well, 24 pass coverage snaps, 51.7 grade. So he didn't grade out well either. And Jordan Scruggs, your other backup corner who plays a lot, actually played more snaps than Coach did, graded out at a 60. So most of your higher grading players were your linebackers like Reed Carrico, Chase Wilson, even Fred Perry graded out fairly well at the strong safety spot. I actually skipped over him earlier. He was your highest graded defensive back in pass coverage at 65.7. He had a heck of a game overall. But for the most part, your DBs struggled in this game, and that is why Bear Bachmeier had himself a day. West Virginia's secondary, or West Virginia's team, let's say the team, was targeted 22 times in this game. BYU had 18 receptions on those 22 targets. Not a winning formula. Here's the problem, though. It wasn't just on the secondary. West Virginia generated almost 0 pass rush in this game against a freshman quarterback, one you thought you needed to pressure to try to force him into some mistakes. Only 5 total pressures by this West Virginia defensive front, or West Virginia defense as a whole, I should say. For the second straight game, they had 0 sacks and a 58.7 overall pass rush grade, second lowest of the season. So the secondary is not getting any help from the front 7, not getting any, especially the front 4, getting pass rush against opposing quarterbacks, especially the last 2 weeks. You've got 2 quarterbacks who aren't known as throwers in Devin Dampier and Bear Bachmeier, who absolutely ate you alive throwing the football. Let's just be honest. It takes us back to the last couple of years of the Neil Brown era, where Jordan Leslie's defense, outside of Beanie Bishop, struggled in pass coverage. You could even go all the way back to 2022, really, and talk about that. They've struggled in pass coverage the last 4 years, or 3 years of Neil Brown, and now this year, the last 3 games at least, in Big 12 play. They've got to improve that. You've got to get more pass rush, and you've got to do better on the back end covering these receivers. It's a must. Now, we're going to talk about some positives in this game as well. Oh, actually, I got to talk about the offensive negatives, don't I? Could not run the football with the running backs. Now, Khalil Wilkins had 23 carries for like 73, 75 yards, something like that. But you could not generate any run game with the running backs, and it was not Dior Hubbard's fault. I didn't realize this stat. This is an alarming stat. I was listening to Mike Kazaza and Chris Anderson at the Country Roads Confidential show they did today. I'm recording this on Monday, by the way, October 6th. But they were talking about, Chris Anderson, I think, brought this up. Dior Hubbard only had 32 yards rushing in the game, but he had 51 yards after contact. Think about that. What's that mean? It means he was getting hit in the backfield for most of the game. How can you expect your running back to have any success when he's having to dodge guys in the freaking backfield on almost every single snap? Again, Not going to win a lot of football games that way. And again, the run blocking grades bear out the issues on this football team, especially some of your offensive linemen. They just continue to struggle in run blocking. Overall run blocking grade as a team, 47.9. Once again, second lowest of the season. Worst was against Pitt, actually, 47.1, believe it or not, a game they actually won. But when you look at some of the individual grades, Tykeus Crawford, great game from him. Best game of the year from him. He actually had a 65.1 in the run blocking grade. So great job, Tykeus Crawford. He actually played well in this game. But then you go down the next highest offensive line grade. Donovan has him at number 8, but he only played 2 run blocking snaps. Then you have to go all the way, for anybody that played any significant snaps, you have to go all the way down to number 15, highest graded run blocker, to Landon Livingston, who graded out at 56.4. Your center. Nick Cray, your left tackle, 51.7. Walter Young, your 2 lowest graded players, your left guard, Walter Youngbear, and your right guard, Kimo Makaniole. They graded out at 48 and 42.8, respectively. Again, this is a football scheme under Rich Rod that likes to run inside, he likes the inside run game. Off the guard and the tackle, and even in the A-gap a lot. But it's not there when you have run blocking grade of 48 and 42.8 by your guards. And then your center wasn't much better at 56.4. It's not going to cut it. And yet they continue to make 0 changes on the offensive line. Are the backups really that much worse? If so, man, that's concerning. Now, they do have a bye week. Maybe they didn't want to make sweeping changes on the offensive line, starting lineup, on a week when they're trying to prep for a game, especially a short week when they had one less day to prepare against BYU. Arguably 2 days because they had a day of travel as well. So maybe this is the bye week where they have an extra week of prep time. Maybe this is the week they can start a new guy or 2 on that offensive line. Maybe we see Carson Lee get more time. Maybe Donovan Haslam starts the next game. I don't know what the answer is, but Walter Youngbear and Kimo Makaniole, God bless them, they're just not getting it done. They continue to be 2 of your weakest links on that offensive line. And we're not seeing progression by them, at least from the PFF grades. Now, I understand PFF grades are not the end-all, be-all. They don't tell the entire story. But we can also see it with our eyes. The offensive line at West Virginia got 0 push in that game against that BYU front. They couldn't even get the ball in the end zone from the friggin' 1-foot line. Coach Rodriguez was disgusted about it after the game. And you saw the offensive linemen flat out getting moved backwards into the backfield. And they the same thing we used to get frustrated at Neil Brown about, Rich Rod seemingly doing the same thing, not holding guys accountable for not playing well. Maybe the backups are just that much worse. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if we see the same starting lineup against UCF in 2 weeks down in Orlando. All right. Now we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit of positive takeaways. But before we do that, I do have to give a quick shout out to some sponsors, so stick around. We'll be right back. Your season, your shot. The NFL season is rolling, and every touchdown can bring you closer to a payout with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. From first touchdown scorer to anytime TD props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, score over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code COUZ. That's code COUZ to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place your first $5 bet. Plus, over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday ticket/terms. Limited time offer. Also, I want to take a second to give a quick shout out to the folks over at Appalachia Digital, the folks who designed our website over at WVSportsChat.com. Thank them for what they're doing. They did a great job over there at our site. They can do that for you too. Go check them out, AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz for a brand new website. Or if you want to level up your current site or get found easier on Google, they can do that too. Again, AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Check them out today. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the second half of the show, which is the positive takeaways from the game. Like I said, I don't want to be totally negative. The team is struggling, but there are some positives to take away from the game. You've got the young quarterbacks, which we'll talk about, much improved tackling from the last couple of games, and then they did force 3 turnovers in the game, an interception and a couple of fumbles. But let's go ahead and spend a second talking about these quarterbacks. Khalil Wilkins, did he look great out there? Not necessarily. He did throw 2 interceptions. One of those was his fault. The other one was not. The second interception was actually a beautiful throw that Cam Vaughn dropped and ended up, he tipped it in the air and it got picked off. But the first one was his fault. He telegraphed his pass. The defensive player read it and jumped in front of it and almost took it back for a pick 6. But West Virginia actually graded out 70.1 in passing offense in the game. And when you look overall at that, Scotty Fox, who only played 3 snaps, or had 3 pass attempts rather, was 3 of 3 for 54 yards and a touchdown. He had a great touchdown pass to Cam Vaughn late in the game. Graded out at 86 overall, 87.5 passing and 63 running. Again, only 3 pass attempts. Khalil Wilkins, who had 20 dropbacks, completed 14 or had 14 pass attempts on 20 dropbacks, completed 6 of those 14 for 42.9%, 85 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Those numbers don't look great, but any of us who watched the game saw a lot of improvement from the first half to the second half of that game. First half, he was missing throws, throwing the ball way too hard on throws where he needed to put some touch on it. It actually reminded me a little bit, and I commented this under Skylar Callahan's show, but it reminds me a little bit of Garrett Green and what he used to struggle with, especially early in his career. Remember when Garrett Green used to miss on the short throws because he was putting too much on the ball and he only had one speed basically, which was a fastball. He couldn't throw a changeup at the time. Khalil Wilkins, I see a lot of that in him right now. But Khalil Wilkins is just a redshirt freshman. He has a lot of time to improve on that. I'm sure he was amped up. He was probably had some adrenaline flowing. And you saw late in the game, he started to settle in a little more, have a better placement on his throws, especially the deep ball. Now, Khalil Wilkins is really good throwing the ball down the field. Again, much like Garrett Green was. I see a lot of similarities there outside of, one's left-handed, one's right-handed. Both are good runners. But I see so much potential in Khalil Wilkins. If you put a good offensive line around him, a good running game, and he can improve on those short passes, the sky's the limit for that young man. Same for Scotty Fox. 2 very talented quarterbacks that this team, in my opinion, can build around for the future. May not help them a whole lot this year until they get these blocking issues fixed and get some better play at the receiver position, which is another concern. The injury to Jaden Bray has really hurt this football team because the defense can now focus on stopping Cam Vaughn, and so far, no other player has really stepped up to consistently be a threat in the pass game. Now, some of that may be because they can't get them the football, but I think a lot of it is just guys aren't getting open enough too. I think some of that has to play a role. And they're not as explosive athletically as what Jaden Bray was. outside of maybe Justin Smith-Brown. But that being said, a lot to build around here with these young quarterbacks. You saw great improvement from Khalil. The young man showed awesome toughness. He can take a hit and bounce back. Not afraid to go out and run it 23 times and do what he has to do to try to win a football game for his team. So with him and Scotty Fox, assuming they both hang around a while, the future is bright, in my opinion, at the quarterback spot. Now, would I object if they go out and try to find a stud in the portal? No. Competition is great. But if they decide to build around these two young men, I think they've got something to build around and win with at those spots if you put good players around them. Now, let's talk a little bit about the tackling. The tackling was atrocious, as we know. Against Utah, I think they missed 24 tackles, according to PFF. Had a tackling grade of 39.5. Well, in the BYU game, they only missed 6 tackles, according to PFF. 6 missed tackles. Huge improvement. Tackling grade of 73 by the defense. And the run defense was good. 76.2 run defense grade. Held LJ Martin in check for the most part. And the other running backs at BYU. For the most. They did have, I think, one explosive run near the end. But outside of that, they held him in check for the most part. But they couldn't stop the pass. That was a problem in this game. So they improved the tackling, but the pass defense, because of poor pass rush and because of coverage issues, struggled. So I did want to bring up the tackling. And then the final positive is obviously the forced turnovers. Now, I failed to mention the 2 turnovers on the offensive side. I did kind of mention when talking about Khalil. But you win the turnover battle. But yet, and you even won the field position battle because of those turnovers. However, you still lose the game by 2 touchdowns because you couldn't capitalize enough on the turnovers. There was a couple different opportunities for this team to make it a 1-score football game, and they couldn't do it because they couldn't punch it in the end zone. Again, I mentioned the not being able to get it in from the 1-foot line. If Cam Vaughn caught that pass from Khalil for the touchdown and it hadn't gotten picked, it goes from 31-10 to 31-17. West Virginia has momentum. Who knows what could have happened? So there were other chances in the game for West Virginia to make it a closer football game than it actually was. So even when the defense, the one thing they are doing well consistently is getting turnovers. But yet the offense is not able to capitalize on those turnovers. So as much as we can harp on the defense's poor pass coverage, we also need to give them credit for getting those 3 turnovers. But the offense has to do more with it when they get them. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on this game. What were your positive and negative takeaways from the game? I want to hear it. Also, want to give a quick shout out. Oh, and be sure to hit the thumbs up button on this video, please. And if you see a hype button below between the download button and the thanks button on your mobile device, please hit it. It really helps get this show out to more people. And again, the thumbs up button does the same thing along with the comments. Interaction is really, really crucial. And all that's free to do. Also free is subscribing to the channel. If you see a subscribe button below, hit it. Also want to give a shout out to my paid VIP members of this episode. I want to thank Susan Ross, a brand new member, for joining the channel. Thank you, Susan Ross. Also want to shout out Trick No Good, James Buchanan, David Cummings, and Brad Cheney. Thank you all for being paid members. If you want to be a club level member where you get early access to some content, it's $4.99 a month. You also get all the other perks that go along with being a pub level $2.99 member, where you also get the shout outs and all members get first dibs in the chat room during live streams. Get higher priority than everybody else. So those are some of the perks that go along with being a member, a paid member. If you want to join, if you don't see a join button below, there's a join button over at my channel homepage beside my profile photo. I really appreciate you tuning into this episode. Thanks again to our sponsors, Appalachia Digital and DraftKings Sportsbook. And thanks to our partners over at the 365 Rogue Sports Network. Thanks to them. Again, check out the 365 newsletter at 365sports.video. I really appreciate you tuning into this episode. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless. And Q Country Road.